Welcome to Friday Friends, RI Elder Info's weekly look at the organizations and individuals providing resources for Rhode Island seniors, caregivers, and professionals.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. It is July 22nd, and we are in the middle of a heat wave, in case you haven't noticed. I am Deb Burton, the Executive Director of RI Elder Info and founder of rielderinfo.com. And every week at 9 o'clock, I come here on social media and I join you via podcast as well to get you the information and resources you need to remain safe and happy and healthy in the community that you choose to be in. And we have a really, really important topic, a real hot topic, you might say, that we're talking about today. But it really can be a lifesaver. So it's really important that you hit the like button and the share button and get this information out today. Today in particular, and over the next couple of days, it's going to be vitally important for people to have what we're talking about today. And as you know, we are a nonprofit, so we could not do this work without the support of our sponsors and our donors, for whom we are extremely grateful. So thank you to Aetna. They are a Medicare provider, and Oak Street Health. They're a primary care provider here in the state. United Healthcare, also Medicare. They also work with individuals who receive Medicaid. And let's see, Tamarisk Assisted Living. They are an amazing assisted living right in Warwick. And what you're watching right now is through the magic of 321 Media. Ben is behind the scenes making this all look great. And if you visited rielderinfo.com, which I encourage you to do, you have seen the work of England Studio. They're an award-winning marketing and website design team, located right over in Quonset, but happy to help you anywhere in the country. The same thing with 321 Media, located right here in the beautiful Westerly, but also available to help you literally anywhere in the world. So today, I would like to welcome Jason Rhodes, who runs the EMS for the Rhode Island Department of Health. Welcome, Jason.
Good morning, Deb, and thank you for having me on today.
How are you?
I'm excellent. Thank you. Staying cool.
So I wanted to come on because we are in the middle of this heat wave, and for some of us, heat and humidity really means like our hair looks like a broom. But I was looking at some information, and heat is actually one of our number one weather killers. What can people do when it's crazy hot, like it's been the last few days and the next coming days where it's in the 90s and humid? What can people, particularly our older adults, do to stay safe?
So I think it's really important, Deb. First of all, is to monitor the weather, right? Be very judicious about monitoring the news and understanding what's coming ahead, so you can start to plan ahead. Right? Planning is very important, and understanding that a heat wave is coming and what that's going to mean for you as an individual. Do you need to stock up on some things? Do you need to get yourself prepared in order to get through that particular period? So.
Almost like when a blizzard's coming.
Almost, yes, yes. Well, a hurricane, blizzard, or whatever. So a heat wave is it's a weather emergency. So we need to treat it as such. Um, and again, so different things do happen during a heat wave weather emergency, right? There's a potential of electrical issues because the transmission lines have more difficulty pushing electricity through when it's super hot out. So there's a possibility you could lose some power. So all those things come into play as well. So being prepared is vitally important. But from an individual perspective, as we get into a heat wave, probably two of the most important things we can do is, one, slow down. If we can work inside, whether it's a vocation or a hobby, we need to pull ourselves inside into cool weather, especially during the heat of the day. From that 10 o'clock to about 6 o'clock time frame, when it's really hot and it's really humid and the sun's high, we really need to, and again, planning ahead to see if we can get ourselves into a habit of if we need to do some work outside, doing it early in the morning or later on at night as the sun starts to set. So that'll be important as well. And two, and probably the most important thing is staying well hydrated, drinking lots of water. Start drinking water in the morning as you get up. Make that part of your routine. Start drinking water before you get thirsty,
Oh.
so you
So
don't get
don't wait
thirsty.
until you're thirsty, because a lot of times I think it's like, oh, I'm kind of hot, I'm thirsty.
Right.
Let me go grab my iced coffee.
Right, exactly. So we know, so water is very important. While there's plenty of water in coffee, we also know that caffeine is a diuretic. So
Okay.
coffee or tea, again, will increase your urination. So we want to keep as much fluid as we can in our bodies during a heat wave. So important, again, to push the water. Again, start drinking it early and often. And again, don't wait till you're thirsty, and that will definitely help you through your day.
Now, how does heat impact our older bodies? Our bodies when we get older is probably the more grammatical correct sentence. How does the heat affect us differently than, say, the 22-year-old who is out jogging in this dreadful weather?
Sure. So, so one thing I've always remembered is my father always said, "I've never seen anybody who's jogging with a smile on their face." Um,
True.
um, but yes, so as we age, our bodies change, right? And one of the things that's very important to remember is, especially to remember the medications that you take. 'Cause certain medications can affect your body's heat regulation and can sometimes cause heat intolerance. Among those very common medications that a lot of people take, for example, antihistamines, um, beta blockers for hypertension or elevated heart rate, some calcium channel blockers as well, some of the antipsychotics such as like Haldol, and it's tricyclic antidepressants. And one of the other ones I wanted to mention is commonly over-the-counter medications as well, like a Sudafed or pseudoephedrine, because they all have effects upon your vasculature. So
It's
therefore,
very interesting that you mentioned the over the counters, because I think a lot of times, I've talked about polypharmacy before, but we don't necessarily think about the stuff that we're just grabbing off the pharmacy shelf. Our vitamins, our minerals, with the pollen the way it was in the spring, like the Benadryls, and how
Mhm.
those might impact. So you're saying even those things are impacted by the heat and how our body processes it.
Yes, absolutely. So let's think of a little scenario, Deb. If you have seasonal allergies and they're particularly bad,
Oh, yeah.
because and they were for many people this year, right?
Yes.
Um, and you're congested, you could conceivably, go to the pharmacy over the counter, get some Benadryl, get some Sudafed, commonly used together, and both of those can have an effect causing heat intolerance, um, especially in an older person. So important to remember that. The other one I wanted to mention, Deb, was some of the dopaminergics that I use, like carbodopa or levodopa for people with Parkinson's disease.
Okay.
Um, and again, as we know, Parkinson's disease can lead to Parkinson's dementia.
Mhm.
So important to keep good track of our loved ones who are afflicted with that disease, especially if they're taking those particular medications during a heat wave.
Oh, that is actually really good. I did not know that. Um, you know, I'm thinking that as we take, the medications that our doctor prescribed, we're taking it exactly as prescribed, like we're not doing anything wrong. But then we start drinking more water like we need to in the heat. Does that in effect, or could that for some medications actually flush those medications out of our system? So, if we're taking a pill at morning and lunch and dinner, but if we're drinking a lot of water, that all of a sudden it's really not lasting until lunch or dinner? Is that possible?
I'm sure anything's possible, but most medications are cleared through the liver,
Okay.
and not as many through the kidneys. So that is a potential. If you have a concern, you should always reach out to your primary care physician, to see if that's a particular area of interest or concern. But probably more likely of a scenario is that you, if you're on a diuretic such as like HCTZ or Lasix, furosemide, you by drinking more water, you're going to increase the need to urinate. Um, and yes, that may happen, and certainly understandable. That may be a deterrent, because some folks may not want to have that experience. But
Yeah, and you know what? It sometimes running to the bathroom gets a little more challenging
sure,
as we get older, arthritis, things stiffen up, and so running to the bathroom in itself becomes a challenge.
sure. So I think that's where the planning we spoke about at the beginning of the program today becomes important. Understanding that yes, you're going to have to plan your day a little bit. There's going to be more bathroom breaks, for sure. So make that, just understand and realize that, and make that part of your day, you know, for this, 4 or 5 day stretch of a heat wave.
So, if somebody feels like maybe they are getting impacted by the heat, what are indicators that you could be in trouble or you need to like get out of the heat now? Like, what's a good indicator?
Sure. So if we look at the spectrum of heat-related emergencies, there's really a kind of a three-step process. So obviously we want to recognize things early. The first thing we would experience is something called heat cramps, and
Okay.
then which can then lead into heat exhaustion, and finally a very, very serious condition known as heat stroke.
Oh
And I'm sure
God.
we've all heard of those things, but so it's really a spectrum, as it progresses. So the first thing we want to do is be able to recognize what heat cramps are, right? You're probably a little bit overworked, you're sweating, you feel dizzy, your pulse rate for you is elevated and it feels like it's racing. Um, I don't want to put a number on it, because some folks are taking beta blockers or calcium channel blockers, which drastically reduce their resting heart rate, because of some of other medical conditions they have. So if it feels really fast for you, we want to recognize that as well, because at this point the body recognizes it's losing fluid. So it flips the switch that, all right, I know I'm starting to get in trouble. So I know that I'm going to breathe a little faster. I'm going to elevate my heart rate to try to push the fluid I have around better. So, and part of that process is my muscles start to cramp because they've lost water and electrolytes as well. So,
Mm.
if we recognize that, also, especially in older folks, we can start to see some swelling in dependent areas like in your ankles and your feet. That's a very common sign as well. So when we hit that situation, time to get indoors, time
Mhm.
to start rehydrating. Also, electrolyte replacement is important too. So like a Gatorade or a sports drink is
Yep.
important. No energy drinks because they're full of caffeine. And again, as we know, that's a diuretic. So so again, dizziness, elevated heart rate, some swelling in your feet and ankles, and cramps in your core muscles. And it's time to get inside, get cool. You can use, um, you know aggressive cooling is okay. With um, some cool towels around your neck, and a fan, right? Because we want to
Okay.
get that kind of convective um, fanning is important because that's how perspiration works. We perspire to get fluid onto our skin, and the wind will help remove that perspiration and keep us cool. So
And
we can recreate that with water and a fan.
and that's where the humidity really plays into it because that humidity, when the humidity's high, your body can't like it's not going into the air because the air is already itself
Right, it's
saturated.
saturated. Absolutely. So it's saturated. So that process doesn't work as well. Absolutely, when it's humid. Um, so
Is it
yeah,
is
go
it
ahead.
safe if somebody's having, some difficulty, is it safe to like I don't know, spray them down with the cold water from the hose. Obviously, you wouldn't necessarily do that for our elders, but or get the cold water or the ice out of the fridge, or some people say if you put the cold water on someone who's overheated, they'll have a heart attack.
So when we get to the point where we recognize somebody is in heat stroke, so we
Mm-hmm.
said there was a continuum here. So we talked about heat cramps, then we move into heat exhaustion, um, which is your body can't stay cool very well anymore. Um, they'll be very, very thirsty. Now dizziness is increased, weak, nauseated. Again, very rapid heart rate right now, and a lot of perspiration. Very cool, but that cool, clammy perspiration, because your body is really recognizing now. All right, I'm going to shut off my peripheral circulation because I'm in trouble, and I'm going to shunt all the blood I have to my core, to my organs.
Is that when you get all red in the face?
Very red in the face. But it's that cool, clammy perspiration. And right? They're very pale, and that they're in trouble. If they move to heat stroke, this is an absolute medical emergency, where they may faint. Their mental status may become very altered, with behavioral changes. Body temp is over 104 degrees. We're approaching 105, 106. The skin is probably going to be dry because you have no fluid left to perspire.
Okay.
So very hot skin. There may be some residual wetness from perspiration, but mostly dry. And I said they're no longer sweating. So this is again a true emergency. Once we reach that point, Deb, they need to be cooled immediately.
Okay.
However that may be, whether it's cold water, ice packs, especially to places on the body where large arteries come to the surface. So that's why we talk about putting cold compress around the neck, because our carotid arteries come to the surface in the groin, where the femoral arteries come to the surface. So important to get get them cooled down as soon as possible if we're in that heat stroke kind of situation. With heat exhaustion, same thing. We can more of a not as a rapid cooling, but fairly rapid cooling is still going to be very important. One old wives' tale we can dismiss, though, is using rubbing alcohol.
Oh,
Right, that was one. Right, we used to put it right. Used to tell you to put it in the tub,
yeah.
and put rubbing alcohol. Right, so cold water is perfectly fine.
That's it. It's interesting because the wisdom was always, put the cold water on your neck, and it was not necessarily like the wisdom didn't necessarily say because that's where your arteries are, but it was always on your neck and on your wrists, the backs of your knees, things
Yep.
like that, to
So
cool you down.
yes, absolutely. So if you think about it, wherever you touch all of those places, Deb, you can feel a pulse.
Yep.
Because the arteries come to the surface, and they're not as deep, so we can get them cooled. We can get the blood cooled down.
So with our older adults, I know perspiring sometimes that's impeded just as a function of aging in general. And the individuals may not necessarily recognize that they're hot. It's not uncommon for me to hear, it's 90 degrees and my mom still feels chilly and wants her sweater and blanket. So is there a way for the bystander to recognize when someone is in trouble, even though that person doesn't recognize that they're in trouble? Anything like that?
Sure, absolutely. And so I think just to answer the first part of your statement, Deb, is that oftentimes peripheral vasculature is affected as folks age, and that affects how they feel externally, right? So they feel chilly, right? So
And when you say
we don't.
peripheral vasculature, for those people who maybe aren't familiar with that term, can you explain what peripheral vascular is?
Sure, I'm sorry. So sometimes I get talking. But the veins and the arteries that are in your arms and your legs and your
And that's
extremities.
something that can
Yep.
really be impacted too for folks who maybe have diabetes, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah,
okay.
especially the very small vessels.
Okay.
and absolutely be impacted. So important to be so in that particular case, good control blood sugar control is important to help reduce those
Mhm,
long-term effects as well.
mhm. Yep.
So
So,
as a friend or a caregiver, important to watch for some signs. Okay, watch for increased perspiration because the body is reacting to we don't perspire for no reason. The body is reacting to a event. So the body has said, okay, we recognize that something's not quite right here. We are we need to cool down. So watch for even if it's minor perspiration because they our friends may not be their body may not perspire as much as it used to. So we have to watch for those subtle signs as well. Um, we can also watch for skin flushing, important changes in skin color, also changes in mentation. So the one of the first things your body will do is if you are starting to go into crisis is your behavior changes. They may become irritable. Your brain is as I like to say, your brain is wants everything. If your brain wants all the blood sugar, your brain wants all the blood oxygen it can get. So as soon as that, if it's off a little bit because my circulation is off and I'm just not getting enough blood flow around, your brain will be the first thing affected, and you will notice it. So um, don't pass it off that grandma's just being crabby today. It
yep.
may be that her brain is being affected, lack of oxygenation due to lack of blood flow.
And I have to say, those people who love me and are around me regularly in the heat know that I get a little cranky in the heat.
Hmm. Right, right.
I
So I
am
think
not a
it's
hot weather girl.
sure, sure. So I think at some level we all do probably, but again, it's important to watch for those subtle signs and be involved and check on folks regularly during a heat wave, especially if you're a primary caregiver or a neighbor. Check on each other regularly throughout the day. Stop by with a bottle of water just to say hi. Um, and again, important to have that interaction and making sure everybody is okay. Just as you mentioned earlier today, Deb, like during a hurricane or during a blizzard, we check on our loved ones and our friends on a routine basis. Heat emergencies are really, especially a heat wave, are
Mhm.
really at that same level. So again, regular check-ins, very, very
Yeah.
important, and helping folks out if they can't get out um, to get some supplies or whatever they need, or that may may be detrimental to their health at this point, then we should all pitch in and be neighborly and be a good family member.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've read stories of folks who are ordinarily physically active, maybe a little bit older, not necessarily older, but and it's like, oh, I missed the bus. Well, that's all right. I'll just walk those few blocks. And then the next thing you know, it's like, yeah, no, I can't do this. And it becomes really important, really critical quickly. One of the questions there, people say that when you are in the high rises, the higher up in the apartments you go, the hotter the apartments get. Is that true?
So I
I
think
mean,
from a
obviously you can't speak for every building,
right,
but
right, right, for sure. So well, I can speak in my own home. Um, that what if I go from the first floor to the second floor, there's definitely warmer. I can, feel that. And heat rises, generally. So heat will go up to the upper floors. So important to recognize where you're living, making sure you again have if there's no central air or air conditioning in that particular building, make sure you have supplies in order to keep yourself cool. Good box fans that can move a lot of air to help stay cool. And again, doing things ahead of time to make sure that you don't lose too much fluid. Again, start drinking water in the morning. Hydration is the absolute key here. And I think as a society, we've done much better recognizing the importance of hydration. And and then there's some other things we can help out with too. So some people just really don't like to drink water, and I know my grandmother would tell me I don't like the taste of water. So um, but doing some things that we can help enhance that, It's we're in a great time of the season. We have lots of fresh fruits and vegetables out available to us. Making up a pitcher with some mint and cucumber or some citrus, um, some strawberries and blueberries are out right now. Again, let them soak in the water, and that helps enhance the flavor a little bit and may enhance getting some water into our friends.
And I would probably guess, watermelon, cantaloupe, all those other fruits and popsicles and ice cream and, of course, our New England lemonade, Dell's lemonade.
Sure, absolutely. We just want to be careful of the sugar content, right?
Yep.
For our friends with diabetes, and again, sugar can be a diuretic as well. So we don't want to
Oh,
overstimulate our system.
that is awesome.
Hmm.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. And is there an issue if it's hot out? If you're Should you try to avoid drinking like ice water they say it shocks your stomach and that you're more likely to make you sick. Is that true or is that a wives' tale?
So I would say, most importantly is to not guzzle cold water, right?
Okay.
You can drink cold water for sure, but drink it slowly. Um, you never want to put a lot of fluid into your system at one point in time, right? Especially for our older friends. So
Yep.
make sure we, again, slowly. That's why I said start early, drink often, as opposed to, oh my Lord, I am super thirsty right now. Let me down this entire bottle of water. That's when we start to get into trouble, because the stomach, so physiologically, your GI tract, your gastrointestinal tract, and your stomach is not happy right now, because we're going to shut off the blood supply to those organs because they're not really needed right now to survive.
Yep.
So the blood flow makes them, lack of blood flow makes them angry. So if we put a lot of fluid into them all at one time,
Ooh.
they don't have the capability of processing that.
Okay.
So I think that's where the term shocks the system comes from. But
Yep.
that's why.
Okay. Okay. And I am one of those people that does have trouble with the heat. Um, if there's folks out there who are watching and maybe they have a window air conditioner, but they can't physically lift it to put it in. Is that something, obviously, maybe not for all, but is that something they might be able to call their local fire department non-emergency number and just ask for help in this heat wave?
Sure, I think there's plenty of resources out there in our local communities, and we really want folks to reach out, because we want to prevent that emergency, right? As opposed to, I think the theme what we talked about today is prevention, right? We want to
Yeah.
prevent things. So, be doing things to help prevent somebody going into crisis should absolutely be our mission and our focus. So,
And
um, the fire department, the local EMS department, the police department, emergency management. There's lots of those resources in individual communities to help folks along.
yeah, ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Right, and I would
And
argue 10 pounds, right?
yes, yes.
It affects everything downstream. If we are able to keep somebody safe in their home, keep them cool, it keeps them out of the hospital, it keeps ambulances available for somebody else who may need it. It keeps, the hospitals open, as opposed to having to, close down for a little bit to clear out their emergency departments. So all of those things, like I said, prevention is absolutely key for us all.
And I've shared, I have trouble with the heat. I don't do well in the heat. I get cranky in the heat. But every so often I think, eh, it's not that bad. I can go out and weed the garden because it's in the shade and I have my water. And uh, usually there's a really clear indicator when I need to stop. And I just wanted to share this with folks more so for humor. Um, Ben, is it possible for you to split screen? Yes, here I am, way overheated. At that point, I had been sitting in the air conditioning for a bit, and the sweat that had wrung my shirt was dried out at that point. But don't get to be like that. Get out of the heat first. Thank you, Ben. I just wanted to share that because, it can happen much faster than you realize. And you might have this thought that you're more resilient than you really are. And that was a day that it wasn't bad. I have been in the heat and ended up having to go to the emergency room because I got way overheated, and it happened really quickly. And that was a surprise to me. I have learned my lesson, so now I don't play around in the heat. So Jason, I really appreciate you coming on today and sharing this information, particularly, about the different ways the medications impact our heat and how the heat impacts our medications and ways to stay safe. I think it's really important. We've got a big stretch of days ahead of us that it's going to be in the 90s with crazy humidity too. We have lost people in this heat, and hopefully we are preventing that from happening to others today. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Deb. It was my pleasure. And it's always good to talk about prevention and hope to keep people safe. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks, you too.
Everybody, it is crazy hot. And I shared that picture of me to give you an idea that, yes, I talk to folks about these things, but these things impact me too. And that's one of the things that's really important, is that the information we share is for all of us here. So I hope that you've hit the like button and the share button. I hope that you will check out your older adults who may be living in the community or who are in the nursing homes and assisted living facilities. There's specific regulations that say if the outdoor temperature is 80 degrees or over, the facility has to provide an area with air conditioning for someone to go to. Note that that does not specify that there needs to be air conditioning in every single person's room. Some of those rooms get pretty hot, and it's up to the facility to make sure they do what they can to keep an individual as cool as possible. So that's closing the curtains, putting the fans on, making sure that the residents are all safe. If you think a facility is too hot, you can always call the Department of Health at 222-5200 and ask them to check, or you can call the Long-Term Care Ombudsman's office at 785-3340 and ask them to go in and do a heat check, because we want to make sure that our loved ones and our friends and our family and the people that we care about are safe no matter where they're located in this heat. It's dangerous. We lose more people in heat than we do in other natural disasters. So I'm looking forward to seeing you all next week. Stay cool, be well, and be kind.
If you liked this video, please follow us on social media and subscribe on YouTube. For more information, visit rielderinfo.com or call 401-585-0509. If you have any questions, email deb@rielderinfo.com.